Let's go. Manchester Marathon 2024. Ah, man. Do you know what? I'm in really good spirits about this one. I think sometimes I can't believe how much I'm achieving at the moment. 2:22:40 I ran in this race and finished 7th overall. And if I think back to when I first started running at 3 hours 17, I'm achieving things now that I never ever thought I would be remotely capable of. If I take my last 5 average, I ran 2:20, 2:20, 2:21, 2:22, 2:22. I just want one under 2:20, just one. Come on, I'm not getting greedy here. But if you take that average, it's 2:21 and something. And you know what? Like 2:20s become the journey, basically. So 2:20 is what keeps me super motivated, not just in running, but it's bringing out the best aspects in other areas of my life. I think all these attempts where I've come so close, they sting, they hurt so much because I truly believe and do what I can to get into that shape. But it's all going to make it sweeter when I do break 2:20, because I promise you, I know I'm going to do it. And if I think back to, when I finished Manchester Marathon, and I see a lot of fellow runners out there, some of them have just literally crossed the finish line. First thing, Nick, did you do it? Did you do it? Did you break 2:20? And I tell them I ran 2:22, and genuinely the reaction is, oh, no. I think some people are more disappointed in a way than I am, and I'm like, I promise you, like, it's still amazing. I'm still so happy with it. I came 7th overall out of 32,000 people. Are you joking? Are you kidding me? Like, how can I be upset with that? The general feeling is that people were very disappointed for me, but at the same time, like, a part of me is disappointed, but a part of me is still super incredibly proud of what I'm achieving now. And marathons are so tough, and we just need to really be kind to ourselves when we hit good results like that. So like I said, yeah, it was a good result, but it could have been a whole lot better. I'll analyze my training in a bit, but I think, you know what, in hindsight, one or two things that I don't like about it is that I'm sort of heading in the opposite direction. If I think of my last 5, my last 2 have been my slowest, and I'm slowing down in that last section, which we learn from each race, but I need to make that right at Berlin. And another part of me is frustrated because I'm getting to this point in my marathon. In my last 3 marathons, I've slowed significantly in the last bits, and it's getting super tough. Like, that was my 79th marathon, and I'm finding that every time now that I get to that last 10, it's like, oh, it's here again, and I'm not enjoying this feeling. Whereas, when I'm running at my strongest, I'm like able to attack it and aggressively go through that last 10. So the solution to that is just to get in better shape before Berlin. It's as simple as that. I need to be at a lower heart rate for that type of effort to be able to tackle that second half. Okay, so let me speak about how the race was from a running point of view. So started off, and I said I'm going to change my strategy for this one from my previous 2. I'm going to go back to what worked best for me, and that was a negative split strategy. When I ran 2:20 and 8 seconds at Berlin, I went through halfway in 70:16, so I was quicker in the second half. And if I look at my PBs, negative splits, that's always when I've run my best. So for this one, I really wanted to incorporate the negative split strategy, and I thought my best possible chance is if I feel good at halfway and I can make up a lot of time in that last 15, last 10Ks even, if I'm feeling strong. So I need to feel as strong as possible at that point. So quite early on, I looked at the weather before, and weather looked pretty good, but once we started, it was actually very windy, and that's what a lot of runners said out there, especially in the first half, quite a big headwind into us, a lot windier than we had anticipated. So that's where teamwork and group work really becomes important. And I was super grateful to have got into a really good pack from early on, and we were clipping along quite nicely. It was ideal. We were going at around 320, 321 per K pace, and remember, to break 220 I need to average 319, so about a second or 2 over, but that's exactly what I wanted to, and I was feeling pretty comfortable, and I knew that, like, don't panic, it's fine, you can make this up in the second half of the race. So at that sort of stage, I was feeling comfortable, and I was truly believing that, sub 220, it's the day, it's on the cards. But I've been in this position a lot of times now to know to not get too excited. The magic is made in that last bit, so today let's make that magic. So yeah, we were sharing the work. It was a really, really good pack. The vibes in that first half of Manchester are unreal. I think there's 125,000 people that support that race. You know, a lot of it is in that first bit, so incredible. It pretty much flew by, and yeah, my thinking for that was just conserve energy for that second half. So couldn't have asked for much more than that first half. We went through halfway in 70:10, so that would have given me a 2:20 and 20-second marathon, and I genuinely believed that I could do a negative split, and I felt good, but I didn't feel incredible. I think, you know what, to do negative splits at that sort of stage or at that sort of speed, you need to feel incredible at halfway, and I felt good-ish. So a part of me was maybe in denial, but I was so, you know, mentally pumped up for the occasion that at that point in time, I truly believed sub 220 was still on the cards, and I felt great. So as soon as halfway came, the gentleman in front that was pacing us for quite a while, he actually peeled off. I didn't realize he was pacing till halfway. My heart kind of sank when I saw him go off course, because yeah, it was keeping the group together quite nicely. But bring on the second half of the marathon, and as soon as he peeled off, the group sort of disintegrated, and I knew I had to kick on to give myself the best chance, which I did, and I tried my best. So two of us peeled off the front, me and the guy who came sixth, absolute legend, and we sort of worked together for about the next 4Ks or so. Then you get to the section, I think it's called Antrim Hill, if I'm correct. It's around the 26-27K mark, and look, it's a sneaky little bugger. Like, it's not a mountain of a hill, it's not massive, but when you're over your threshold and you're on the limits, it definitely takes the wind out of you, and that's what it did to me. So what happened is I got up this hill, and I think I went around 328 per K, which is probably around 8-9 seconds slower than what I wanted to be averaging throughout, so that's perfect. Didn't lose a lot of time there. And then on the way back down, I made up that time. So my next kilometer after that, what happens is you go up the bump, turn around, come straight back down, and you can make up a bit of time. And I did. I think I went around 312 or 313 per K. But after that K, this was probably around the 28K mark. That's the first time I realized that 220 wasn't going to happen. It was hard to accept. I think I had believed up until that point. After that, I just didn't physically feel strong enough. I think mentally I was tough enough that day, and you know, there's demons that pop up, I was blocking them out. I was so mentally strong, but physically, and I'll talk about the factors in a bit as to why I don't think I was quite in the shape I needed to be in. It was a hard one to accept, because now you're at a stage of a marathon where you've got 14 kilometers left, right? 14 kilometers is a very long way to go when you sort of not on top of your game, let's say. At that stage, it was solo running for the rest of the race. The person who finished 6th peeled off in front of me. I couldn't even see him anymore, and the person in 7th behind me, in 8th behind me, I couldn't even hear. So it was pretty much all that crowd support and people and noise and group and awesome running in the beginning had disappeared, and now I was running by myself through these quieter Manchester suburbs. Thankfully, Mike filming on the GoPro was there for bits and pieces, but yeah, it was very much a case of look ahead and just get to the next kilometer. It went from me being super in control of my splits to me now losing control over my splits and checking my watch very often, too regular, because I didn't know what pace I was running. It felt like it was tough, and it felt like I was moving okay and pretty fast, but the only way I could really tell was when my watch beeped for the kilometers, and from that stage it sort of dropped off by about 10 seconds a K. So I picked it up to 319 before that point, and now it was sort of 329, 330, 331, 330, and it was all just about damage control in a way, but at the same time, like, fighting for absolutely every second. So if that happens to you in a race, it's hard. It's very hard, because your morale's down, my form's not that great, I'm not physically feeling great. You know, all these negative thoughts are popping into your head saying, you know, just slow down, pull over, you can end this. But whatever you put in there, you thank yourself for it afterwards. So you got to like fight for every second and just block out those thoughts. And I promise you, when you look back at it, it seems like a long time in that phase, but it's such a small section. I mean, that's probably what's under an hour worth of running. But yeah, struggle city. So, you know, just really trying to work through each K. I think what I found helped me was looking far into the distance and picking a point. And, you know, it might have been a tree or a shop or whatever the case is, and just getting to that point and then looking far ahead and getting to that point. One thing that certainly helped was bagging a 3-pointer, getting my bottle in the bin, little things like that. Take your mind off the pain for just a few seconds, and it's amazing how far that can go in the bigger scheme of things. I know at one stage, like, these little kids were running next to me, all those little bits just sort of take your mind off the pain. Then you sort of come back on the routes within the last 5Ks, and that really helped me. Just seeing a lot of other runners going through the marathon just helped. I had not seen another runner for probably about almost 10Ks. It was like a solo time trial at that point. And the support drops off in that residential suburb area. So to see these people and to have a whole lot of runners supporting me and shouting for me was really cool. And naturally, I thrive with support crowds. I think a lot of us do. So automatically, my pace was picking up a bit. And I could find something in that last bit, but obviously it was never going to be enough to break 220. So managed to grind it out, and I think I really tried to pick it up for a bit, and then I thought, if I pick it up any more than this, then I run the risk of completely blowing up. So let's just be sensible here. So it was a combination of pushing to my absolute limits, but at the same time being as sensible as possible. And then yeah, into that last kilometer, it's quite a long stretch. That finish line at Manchester is awesome. Some really good crowd support. I was coming up very quick on 6th place, and in hindsight, or at that point in time, I definitely think I could have probably finished 6th, but I felt like there's no ways I'm gonna run and outdip this guy for the line, because I'd done quite a bit of work behind him from 21 to 25Ks. And you know what, like 6th or 7th at that time, it didn't matter too much. So I wasn't gonna be that person. But it was quite nice to finish quite close to someone. I just wanted to get across the line for the last 10Ks. And you know what, at that point in time, my thoughts at that moment is that it's another missed opportunity. And I think because I mentally prepare myself in such a way that I truly 100% believe today is going to be the day that I break 220, when it doesn't happen, it hurts. And I don't think I showcase that a lot from my videos, because, you know, I'm always trying to be educational, bubbly, happy, smiley, but sometimes I can be a little bit hard on myself and you know, get disappointed at the end, and that's okay. It's good to be disappointed. And if you find you're disappointed after, you know, certain attempts or certain runs, it can be really, really good motivation. Because what I found in the past, and a good example here, is when I ran 2:30 and 1 second at London. It was, you know, the most devastating feeling afterwards. It was like someone literally crushed my soul. But it lit a fire in me that I was like, dude, you can never let that happen again. And then I ran 2:20 in 8 seconds. So I did let it happen again. But that actually didn't hurt as much as the 2:30:01. But anyways, my point of this is that if you do just miss your goals, it's like nothing is more motivational than that. So I walked away like super hungry to make things right, to put in better, smarter, harder work, get into better shape, shoot the lights out of Berlin, because, you know I'm capable of more than that. And I think had I achieved the goal, I mean, okay, first of all, I would have celebrated like the world's gonna end. But second of all, I don't know if I would be as motivated and as hungry and as determined. So yeah, you know, there's really good pros and cons to both. So at that point in time, crossing the finish line, it was a tough one. But then I think once you come back to reality and realize, actually, Nick, like 220 is the journey. Whether you break it or not, when I break it, I've got to believe. But whether it's this one or not, it actually doesn't matter. Like, you know, it's teaching you how to work hard, not just in running, but in life. And I think that's what I'm taking away from each attempt after attempt. I've had 6 attempts now. My next one's going to be my 7th. Can you believe it? I don't want to be that person that gets to number 10, please. And I'll line up and I'll do whatever I can to get in shape, and I'll speak through how I'm going to get into shape in a bit. But yeah, at the end of the day, like, it's really just bringing out the absolute best in me. So I can't ask for much more. But yeah, disappointed, super proud, and hungry at the same time, if that makes sense. Okay, so onto a few factors as to why I think I fell short this attempt. So I'm by no means making excuses. I just want to learn from these mistakes, and I want you to learn from the mistakes that I'm making as well. And we learn so much from each race, like I keep saying. The first thing, and the biggest thing by miles, was the fact that I'd moved house about 2 weeks before Manchester Marathon. And moving house is a massive event. I know previously when I moved and it was just Taryn and I, it was chilled. But having moving houses with 2 little ones, that's like a complete different story. And you know, we've got 4 flights of stairs in this house, and after that first week of moving, I was like exhausted. I'd get to the top of the stairs and just want to collapse. How on earth am I going to manage to run a marathon, let alone a 220 attempt? And you know, moral of the story for this is that at the end of the day, I'm not a professional athlete, and life goes on. There's so many life factors, and I can't just put the house move on pause because I want to have a crack at a sub 220 marathon. No, life goes on, and we keep on doing these things, and that's what keeps it exciting. But lesson learned, I think, you know what, if I really want to give things a good go, you need to just prioritize and plan life a little bit better, because a massive thing like that, when the margins are tight, knocks the absolute daylights out of you. Then the next thing is, obviously, I'm a dad of 2 little ones, so I've got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and yeah, they're just, you know, my happiness and joy. And with that comes sacrifices. Parents out there will know exactly what I'm talking about. And I often get asked, how do you find the balance between parenting, working, running? And that's a whole different YouTube video. And the irony of that is that I've been wanting to make that video for a while, and I will, but I just haven't had the time to do it. That just shows you how much this balance factor plays into the equation. But yeah, I've made a decision that, you know, I want to be the best possible dad that I can be for my daughters, and I always want to be there. And that's why I do a lot of my training during nursery hours and stuff like that. And it's just an area which I'm not prepared to sacrifice for. I think it's already getting a little bit easier, but when they grow up and sleep better and need a little bit less attention, then I think life's going to allow me to really shoot the lights out. So what I talk about, and if you look at the marathon progression to date, is like I've worked down to 220, and now I'm like 221 and 222. And I think what I'm doing is I'm accumulating all these little fireworks, and we're going to have a firecracker show as soon as life allows. So when these kids grow up a little bit and I can get good rest and get good training in, then yeah, 220, we're going to absolutely smoke it, that's for sure. But hopefully it's not going to take too many more attempts. And then the next thing is that, you know, I sort of try and train like a professional in a way, but I live very far from a professional life. So I pour my heart and soul into my business, Best Athletics, and I'm incredibly proud of where it's at. Like I can't ask for much more. It's one of the fastest growing clubs in the UK. I think there's over 550 members. We registered 3.5 years ago. There's over 250 coach runners across all the coaches on the Best Athletics platform. So, you know, having partnered up with Adidas recently, and I think the club's just in a really, really amazing place. We had over 100 people at London Marathon, over 50 at Manchester, and that gives me way more satisfaction, and was way bigger than 220 in many ways for me. So if I'm working super long and hard hours and giving a lot to my business, then I can't expect to perform at optimal levels, and that's just something I have to accept, and that's something that I have accepted. Obviously, I need to bear in mind that I'm 34 now, and I've been running for 11 years, serious marathon stuff for about 7 years. So I'm probably going to peak for around 3 more years. So I don't want to just look back at life and say I gave all to my work and didn't actually give enough to running to be able to crack that 220. So, you know, at some point I will prioritize running a little bit more, but at the same time, you know, sub 220 doesn't pay the bills. My work and my business does pay the bills, and ultimately I love doing PBs, but I've always said helping others achieve a PB is just so much more satisfying. If you've ever done it yourself, you know exactly what I mean. But yeah, burning the candle from a lot of different ends. But if I had to prioritize running, I think I would achieve a lot more, but at the same time, easier said than done, because I've got a lot going on. And then the other thing is that, or the other 2 things, I think the marathon block wasn't long enough. I did a 6-week block, and clearly 6 weeks of marathon training wasn't enough for a sub 220 attempt. I'd ramped up the speed. I got to my 5K sort of PB shape almost. I ran 14:34 in the build up to this. So I really got that speed up and then pivoted that off into the marathon block. But I don't think 6 weeks was enough in hindsight. And then into my next point, in those 6 weeks, I wasn't doing enough marathon pace work. So if I look at my training, it was almost inevitable that I was going to run 221 or 222. I didn't do enough pace at marathon work, and marathon pace for me is 3:19. I was doing a lot of stuff at a bit faster and a lot of stuff in my bigger sessions at a little bit slower. So come race day, it felt comfortable for 24 Ks, but in the last bit, there was almost physically no ways I could sustain it because I hadn't trained enough at that pace. Okay, now onto what are we going to do next? How are we going to crack that magical 220 at Berlin Marathon? It's my 3rd Berlin Marathon in a row. So I made significant inroads in my early years of running, and now the marginal gains are so small. But one thing that would significantly level me up, I believe, is if I had to do a high altitude training camp. Okay, so let's just say I had to take 6 to 12 weeks in maybe heat and high altitude and really transform my body. It's what a lot of the professionals do. They train up at high altitude, you generate a lot more red blood cells, come down to low altitude and fly. So let's do that and just run 210 at Berlin. Just kidding. But that's off the equation. I'm not going to do a high altitude training camp. And the reason why is because I want to be there for my family. And if I had to take my kids to high altitude, that would just not work. So yeah, that's just completely off the cards and something I'm not prepared to do. And at the same time, guys, that keeps it exciting. Like, we've got to keep all these other variables going and try and break 220 at the same time. The plan of action going forward into Berlin is to get a pair of Pro Evo 1s and just absolutely fly. No, I'm just kidding. But I actually do have a pair of Pro Evo 1s on the way. Can you actually believe it? I think there's 1,000 of those pairs in circulation. And yeah, whether or not I'm going to run Berlin in them, I don't know. A part of me is like, you need to get into shape and give yourself the best chance. And obviously those shoes are perfectly legal. You need to. But at the same time, I feel like I don't want to crack 220 at Berlin. And a lot of people say it's the shoes. Or I want to, do it in my normal shoes or my Pro 3s and then be able to unlock a reward, and that reward is a Pro Evo 1. So yeah, some food for thought. Let me know in the comments below, but I'll cross that bridge at a later stage. So the plan going forward is I'm doing an ultra marathon in a few days time, which is a bit crazy. It was never part of the plan, but if ever there's a time to do it, it's now. And I come from an ultra marathon background. Life's too short and I'm a yes kind of guy, so rings full of ultra Munich, let's do it. I actually have no clue what to expect, but we're going to wing this one and see how it goes. And then from that, I want to recover properly. It's important to recover properly so you can hit optimal performance levels when you're training. So the plan is to just get the body sort of moving a bit better. So focus on yoga, Pilates, runner's mobility, some drills, things like box jumps, pogos, just really, some basic drills. I want to feel good. I want to feel like I'm flowing nicely. From there, once I'm flowing nicely, is to ramp up that speed work. So if I look at my 3,000 meter PB is 8:50, which is slower average pace than my 5K PB at 14:34. Like ding, 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 something's wrong there. I need to make that 3,000 meter time faster. And why I haven't done that is because a part of me is a little bit scared because I'm not really a track runner. I've got track shoes, but I encourage my athletes to snap out of your comfort zone, and that's what I'm going to do. So really try and get those fast, really speedy 400 meter reps, 1K reps, longer recoveries, get that leg speed right up, attack that 3,000 meter PB, and from there pivot into some 5K races. So I know in Battersea Park, there's quite a few 5K races in the summer. Really try and get into PB shape and PB over the 5K. From there, I want to PB into the 10K. So my 10K PB is 30:46, something I definitely think I can improve on. And at that point, it's going to be the start of the Berlin Marathon block. So I'm doing a 10-week block for Berlin Marathon. In the past, I've usually done an 8-week block. This one, I did a 6-week block, fell short. Maybe a 10-week block of marathon-specific stuff is what I need. Obviously, another point to note is that I'm living in Winchester now. It's a lot more hilly than in London. So I'm going to get a lot more elevation, a lot more hills, and I'll be working a lot harder for my pacing. And maybe that's what I need in order to crack that magical sub 220. I really need to get comfortable at 3:16 per kilometer pace. I want to target 3:18 per K pace, which will give you 2:19.15. So I need to just get the mind and body comfy at 3:16. So that feels comfy for a large portion of race day. And that's pretty much it. I think last thing to note is that I'm going to do a lot more threshold work. And very, very important point that I almost forgot to mention is that I'm planning my training a whole lot better. So I think if I look at this most recent block, in my head, I've always planned my training, but I've never actually written it down. And if I look back to sessions, some weeks were bigger than other weeks from the point of view that my volume and mileage sort of went up and down. But ideally what you want is you want to gradually build volume and mileage as you go along. So much better planned. A good example of this is threshold sessions. I might do sort of, 6 by 1 mile threshold, and then 3 by 2 mile, and then 2 by 3 mile, and then sort of eventually like a 6 mile straight, and then 9 mile threshold. So ultimately you're just building that aerobic engine all the way through and gaining momentum as you're going along, because you want to start off here and you really want to progress before you taper and then shoot the absolute lights out. And apart from that, I'm really open to a running coach. As you know, being a coach myself, coaches need coaches, and I've never ever had a running coach. Can you believe it? But I'm in discussions with 1 or 2 people, and it looked like something really might come through. So I'm super excited about that, and perhaps I just need a bit of a change of perspective. If I think about you know, what the definition of insanity is by Albert Einstein. It's by doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And I think that's a little bit harsh in this case, because 220, 221, 222 for me is still phenomenal. But at the same time, if I don't tweak anything, I'm going to keep running those times. And as much as I would love to run those times, like it's incredibly consistent, I do want to dip under 220. I know I'm capable of it. I just need to tweak the ingredients, get into slightly better shape, which I know I can. So let's do that ahead of Berlin and go all in. Okay, now onto whether I think Manchester Marathon is a fast course. Let me start off by saying that the support was really, really amazing. It's obviously the second biggest marathon in the UK. London's the biggest marathon major, obviously, but as far as UK races go, it's massive. There's 32,000 people. There's 125,000 supporters. The support in that first half is unbelievable, and the support towards the end is amazing as well. You can definitely let the crowds drive you. But I would say it's a fast-ish course. It is definitely quick. There's not that much elevation, but there's a whole lot of courses fast, and the reason why I say that is because it's slightly undulating. There's a few bumps. As I mentioned earlier, there's that one bit of a pull, I don't know if you can classify it as a hill, maybe a slightly less aggressive hill at around the 26k mark. And all that stuff does is it slows you down. Lots of bends, lots of like undulating roads, quieter suburbs, stuff like that. So I would say it's a fast-ish course, but there's definitely faster courses around there. People often ask me, what's faster, do you think, London or Manchester? And I would probably tend to say London, just because there's nothing of that sort of longer elevation in London, and the support at London is just unreal and gets you going. I would say there's faster courses than London as well. If you're looking for a really fast course, you're looking to do Berlin, Seville and Valencia. I think those two are super, super stacked. And if I'm talking from a sub-elite point of view, at Manchester, I ran that last 15k solo, 2:22:40 got me 7th place. If I think about if I ran that time at a Valencia, I don't even think I would come in the top 100. Berlin, perhaps around 100th or so. So I think it goes a long way having people to run with in that last bit when you're fighting those demons yourself. So there's definitely faster courses around there. Do I recommend it? Yes, you've got to do it. It's awesome. It's an Adidas event, as you know. And really, really, really cool. I just want to finish off by saying thank you so much for the support this one, guys. I want to break 220 more than ever for myself, but for you as well. And the day is going to come. The day is going to come, and then we're all going to go to Vegas and celebrate together, I promise you. But yeah, for now, it's all just about getting through this ultra, breaking the body down, getting that speed up, and really focusing and doing what it takes to get into shape at Berlin. Marathons can be cruel, they can be brutal. Berlin's not going to say, Nick's close, let's just give him a sub 220. No, I've got to go out there and get it, and that's what I'm going to do. Boom shakalaka, let's go.